tattoo when she returned, with some things under her cloak, and she was breathing quick and seemed hurried, and shut the door after thanking him, and he saw no more of her for 15 minutes, when the door opened and out she came, the same cloak around her, yet she looked different, somehow, and must have tiptoed, for he didn't hear her heels as he had before. She didn't seem quite so tall either, and that was all, for he never knew anything more about it till the steward came running to tell of the escape. So Schmidt could throw but little light on the situation, save to Flint himself, who did not then see fit to say to anyone that at no time it was communicated that Miss Flower should be allowed to go and come unattended. In doing so, she had deluded some beside the sentry. It was late in the night when No. 6 regained his senses and could tell his tale, which was even more damaging. Quite early in the evening, so he said. As early as 9 o'clock he was under the hospital corner, listening to the music further up along the bluff. A lady came from the south of the building as though she were going down to Sudstown. Miss Foster had gone down not long before, and Hogan with a lantern and 2 officers' ladies. But this one came all alone and spoke to him pleasant-like, and said she was so sorry he couldn't be at the dance. She had been seeing the sick and wounded in the hospital, she said, and was going to bring some wine and jellies. If he didn't mind, she'd take the path around the quartermaster's storehouse outside, as she was going to Mr. Hayes and didn't care to go through by the guardhouse. So Six let her go, as he had no orders again it, even though it dawned on him that this must be the young lady that had been carried off by the Sioux. That made him think a bit, he said, and when she came back with a basket nicely covered with a white napkin, she made him take a big chicken sandwich. Sure, I didn't know how to refuse the lady until she poured me out a big tumbler of wine. Wine, she said. She was taking it to Sergeant Briggs and Corporal Turner that was shot at the Elk, and she couldn't bear to see me all alone out there in the cold. But Six said he dasn't take the wine. He got 6 months blind once for a similar solecism, and mindful of the major's warning, this was diplomatic, Six swore he had sworn off and had to refuse the repeated requests of the lady. He suspicioned her, he said, because she was so persistent. Then she laughed and said good night and went on to the hospital. What became of the wine she had poured out? This from the grim and hitherto silent doctor seated by the bedside. She must have tossed it out or drunk it herself, perhaps. Six didn't know. Certainly no trace of it could be found in the snow. Then nothing happened for as much as 20 minutes or so, and he was over toward the south end of his post, but facing towards the hospital when she came again down the steps, and this time handed him some cake and told him he was a good soldier not to drink even wine, and asked him what were the lights away across the Platte, and he couldn't see any, and was following her pointing finger and staring, and then all of a sudden he saw a million lights dancing, and stars and bombs, and that was all he knew till they began talking to him here in the hospital. Something had hit him from behind, but he couldn't tell what. Flint's nerve was failing him, for here was confirmation of the general's theory, but there was worse to come, and more of it. Miss McGrath, domestic at the trader's, had told a tale that had reached the ears of Mistress McGann, and 'twas the latter that bade the major summon the girl and demanded of her what it was that she had seen and heard concerning Crapo, and the lady occupant on the second floor front at the trader's home. Then it was that the major heard what others had earlier conjectured, that there had been clandestine meetings, whispered conferences, and the like, within the first week of the lovely niece's coming to Fort Frayne. That note had been fetched and carried by Crapo, as well as Pete, that Miss Flower was either a son of Bullist or a good imitation of one, as on 2 occasions the maid had peeked and seen her downstairs at the back door in the dead hours of the night, or the very early morning. That was when she first came. Then, since the recapture, Miss McGrath felt confident that though never again detected downstairs, Miss Flower had been out at night, as Miss McGrath believed her to have been the night. When was it? When little Kennedy had his scrab with the Sioux, the boys do be all talking about the night, in fact, that Straber's band slipped away from the Platte. Ray's troop followed at dawn. Question is how it was possible for Miss Flower to get out without coming downstairs. Miss McGrath said she wasn't good at monkey shines herself, but Women that could ride straddle-wise were capable of climbs more difficult than that which the vine trellis afforded from the porch floor to the porch roof. Miss McGrath hadn't been spying, of course, because her room was at the back of the house, beyond the kitchen. But how did the little heel tracks get on the veranda roof, the road dust on the matting under the window, the vine twigs in that queer maid skirt never worn by day? That Miss Flower could and did ride a straddle, and ride admirably when found with the Sioux at Bear Cliff. Everybody at Frayne well knew by this time that she had so ridden at Fort Frayne was known to no officer or lady of the garrison then present, but believed by Miss McGrath because of certain inexpressibles of the same material with the quay maid skirt, both found dusty and somewhat bedraggled, the morning Captain Blake was having his chase after the Indians, and Miss Flowers was so wild excited like. All this and more did Miss McGrath reveal before being permitted to return to the sanctity of her chamber, and Flint felt the ground sinking beneath his feet. It might even be alleged of him now that he had connived at the escape of this most dangerous and desperate character, this Indian leader, of whom example, prompt and sharp, would certainly have been made, unless a general, at the ends of justice, were defeated. But what stung the Major most of all was that he had been fairly victimized, hoodwinked, cajoled, wheedled, flattered into this wretched predicament, all through the wiles and graces of a woman. No one knew it, whatever might be suspected, but Nanette had bewitched him quite as much as missives from the East had persuaded and misled. And so it was, with a hardened and resentful heart, that the Major sought her on the morrow. The general and the commanders afield would soon be coming home. Such Indians as they had not rounded up and captured were scattered far and wide. The campaign was over. Now for the disposition of the prisoners. It was to tell Miss Hayward Nanette, especially Nanette, why the sentries were re-established about their home, and that, though he would not place the trader's niece within a garrison cell, he should hold her prisoner beneath the trader's roof to await the action of superior authority on the grievous charges lodged at her door. She was able to be up, said Miss McGrath. Not only up, but down in the breakfast-room, looking blighter and more like herself than she had been since she was brought home. "Say that Major Flint desires to see her and Miss Hay," said Flint, with majesty of mien, as, followed by two of his officers, he was shown into the trader's parlor. And presently they came, Miss Hay pale and sorrowing, Miss Flower pale, perhaps, but triumphantly defiant. The one sat and covered her face with her hands and listened to the Major's few words, cold, stern, and accusing. The other looked squarely at him with fearless, glittering eyes. "You may order what you like as far as I am concerned," was the utterly reckless answer of the girl. "I don't care what you do now that I know he's safe, free, and that you will never lay hands on him again." "That's where you're in error, Miss Flower," was the Major's calm, cold-blooded, yet rejoiceful reply. It was for this indeed that he had come. "Ralph Moreau was run down by my men soon after midnight, and he's now behind bars." End of chapter 22, recorded by Ken Campbell.